Okay, so today we are going to make a primitive wood sign. All I have here is a piece of scrap wood. I did lightly sand it because it was very, very rough. So what we're gonna do first is paint our base layer. And I'm going to paint my base layer black. I'm just going to roughly paint it. I don't want it perfect because again, it is gonna be a primitive sign. So I'm just going to quickly do a base coat of black on this. And I do make sure I get most of my sides and edges because this will show through after we sand lightly. I'm just going to do a really rough coat on this really quick. You don't want it perfect. Not going to cover all the wood because again I want that some of this wood to show through after. I'm just going to hit it really light. And I'm just using for my base layer Waverly chalk paint in ink. And again just really fast. A lot of these saw lines are going to stay visible, which I like. You can make sure that you cover every nook and cranny of it, but I prefer the really rustic look. I did cut a stencil for this sign earlier with my Cricut. You certainly can have it say whatever you want. You can purchase a stencil. Or if you have a Cricut, you can cut your words, but this is just how I do my signs. I know there's a lot of people out there that make them, that do them a lot of different ways, but this is the way that works best for me. And I really love them. My husband's gonna probably freak because I do have quite a lot of signs in my house. He insists we don't need any more, but I love signs. And the way that I make them now is different than how I used to do it. Just I think with practice and the way my style has changed a little bit also is reflected in how I make my signs now. Just hitting the ends really fast. Again, I'm not doing a perfect coat of paint here. I don't want it perfect. Just gonna cover most of the wood. I'm not going to sand this yet. I'm gonna wait until we'll dry this. Then I think on top of this, I haven't totally decided yet if I'm going to do a beige on top of this or a cranberry. The room that it's going in is cranberry or burgundy. I just haven't decided yet. So we'll figure that out as we go. Okay. Let's pick this up so you can see how much I'm leaving on here. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna leave. I'm not going to do any more black, except maybe that spot right there. That's a lot of wood showing through. Just this one little patch right there. There we go. That's better. Sometimes I find it's better to look at it in the camera so I can get more of an idea. Okay, this is a lot over here. I just painted the island again. I need a tablecloth. Okay, I'm just kind of scrubbing it in some of the spots. Okay, I think that's good. So that's what I'm leaving. Those are the ends, the sides, I'm sorry. So I'm leaving quite a bit of the wood showing through. I am going to do another coat on top of this, but not of black. It's going to be the base layer for the sign that I'm going to do on top of this. And I think we will go with burgundy for the top coat on top of this, and then I'll probably do beige lettering or maybe black, depending on how dark the burgundy comes out, because I want the letters pretty visible. Okay, I'm just going to hit this with a hairdryer for a second. Dry it good before we do the next layer. Just want this really, really dry. It is chalk paint, so it dries rather quickly. I think that's good. And as I was doing that, I totally changed my mind by going with beige on top of the black. And I'm going to do warm buff. It is an apple barrel satin finish, quick drying. Okay, so we're gonna hit this on top of the black. Then we'll dry that up with the hairdryer and do the stencil right away. I'm just going to squeeze this one onto a plate 'cause I want to control how much paint I actually put on top of this black. And I find if I squeeze it on here and then spread it out, it doesn't come out how I like it. So this one, I just have a regular paintbrush. Just going to tap in just a small amount and lightly. Now I do want some of the black to show through, but we are, again, going to sand some of this off and distress it, and probably distress it with more black paint also on top of this beige. So just lightly going over the black. I also want some of the wood to show through also on the spots that I missed with the black. I just find it makes it look more weathered. Now I did try to do the Elmer's glue chippy paint technique. I'm not a fan. It's pretty and I like it, but it's not my style, I guess. I like more sanded, weathered look than a chippy look. So I made a sign doing that, and this is the sign that's going to replace that one, because I don't like it. Maybe it's the way I did it, I don't know. I need more practice doing it, I guess. Or just stick with what works for me, which is this. And I'm just lightly going over it, get it to where I think it's good. Now, if you do have a Cricut and you're trying to learn, there's so many awesome tutorials on YouTube. That's how I learned how to do it. I do use an iPad for mine. I don't have a laptop, or I do have a computer, but I like to be able to design it sitting on the couch and then pull the Cricut out when I'm done. I just find that works for me. And I don't like what I just did there. See, I put way too much and I gotta run, so I must fix that. There we go. Spread it out. And I'm actually gonna leave it like that with some of the black showing. Again, I really like the rustic look. There are a lot of websites now that will design you a stencil, especially Etsy. Some Etsy shops, if you don't have a Cricut. I do buy stencils occasionally. I bought one from the Dollar Tree the other day, where I made a cute sign for my kitchen. Okay, I just want a little bit more right here because the black is not quite dry and it's turning more of a muddy gray. Okay, I'm just going to hit the side a little bit. I do have some pine cones I went foraging at my daughter's house the other day because I didn't have enough at my house, and I will be doing a pine cone wreath, but I have to clean all the pine cones and it's a lot of work and I'm just not up for it today. So maybe next week I will be able to get that done. Don't know where I'm going to hang it yet. But it is going inside, so I really want to make sure that I clean the pine cones well so I don't get sap on the walls or on my floor. This sign, it's just a simple wood sign. And it really doesn't take long. I think the longest part is making sure your paint is dry enough so that the stencil sticks to it well. Okay, we are almost there. Actually, I'm going a little bit heavier with the beige than I normally do. Easier to sand paint off after than it is to have not put enough. So I want to make sure I get it to where we are almost there. And I'm not totally covering it. Again, I'm just lightly going over the black. Dry this up a little bit and then we'll see if I think it needs more. And it's all personal preference. What I think isn't necessarily how you're going to like your finished piece. This is the worst part, waiting for everything to dry. I don't have much patience with it. As you can see, here we go. Yeah, see that? I need to be patient. still tacky. Just that one spot. I think I'm going to do a little more beige when this is dry enough. Okay, let's do a little more beige. Because again, you can always sand paint off, but if you don't do enough in the beginning, I find you can't fix it. This is easier. I will sand quite a bit of this off after. I also like to sand the stencil and distress the stencil once it's on. I think signs are my favorite thing. Well, I love to make wreaths too, but I love to make signs. There's just so many different sayings you can put on them, so many different ways you can change them up with the type of lettering you use. This is much better. A little bit more beige, and we'll let that dry. Dog my bark, trash man. I have these crows that peck my trash. Drives me nuts. Okay, I think if we're gonna leave it like this, there's just a hint of black showing through. I'm gonna let this dry really, really, really good. So I'm actually gonna let this one dry. So when it's dry, I will come back, show you how I lightly sand this before I do the stencil, then we'll do the stencil, let that dry, and sand that a little to make it nice and rustic looking. So I will be back, unfortunately, with a part 2, because this is going to take a while to dry. There's quite a bit of paint on here. So I will be back.